Runes are the letters in a set of related alphabets known as runic alphabets, which were used to write various Germanic languages before the adoption of the Latin alphabet. Recently, a whole new set of runes has come to light. Caryll Runes contain transcriptions of the inhuman utterings of great ones. The runes have special properties like increased stamina or health restoration, which can be transferred to people. Whether the runes are tangible or spiritual, how they're transmitted, and their general nature is unclear. Whether the utterings of great ones were intentionally sought out, or whether those utterings were simply overheard, is not all that clear either. However, during the time of Byrgenwerth, the Healing Church, the Choir, and Menses, certain people seemed to have the ability to envision runes, either following contact with great ones or under exceptional circumstances. Persons with rune envisioning talents could have shared their knowledge of runes with their entourage through telepathy, or by transcribing runes either on a wall, a piece of paper, or a rounded rock. Whatever the method, runes could have become visible to those who never perceived the human utterings of great ones firsthand. With the documentation and dissemination of runes, a plethora of individuals could have been able to internalize the runes, to etch them into the mind through the use of special instruments like the Rune Workshop tool, for example, and thus reap the rewards embedded within the runes. The runes take their name from the Runesmith Caryll, a student of Byrgenwerth. Not much is known about Caryll. It is known, however, that in a world where blood ruled, Caryll runes did not rely on blood in any measure. Manifestations of Caryll runes were scattered all around the lands. Caryll was either the most popular rune maker or the person to popularize the runes. Herbert West, a famous scholar who specializes in the history of Yharnam, suggests that Caryll may have either been particularly good at listening to great ones, or simply elected to write down the rune system. West also points out that runes may have existed before Caryll's time. Although the runes bear Caryll's name, Caryll was not the only one who dabbled in the transcription of inhuman whispers. It is known that a rune called Milkweed was envisioned by Adeline, a patient of the research hall. Perhaps she conceived the rune after repeated contact with brain fluid. Moreover, the old hunter Ludwig discovered the guidance rune along with the Holy Moonlight Sword. It's difficult to say though whether Ludwig envisioned the rune himself after touching the sword, whether the sword spoke to Ludwig and showed him guidance, or whether Ludwig simply had the rune fall onto his lap. Air, moon, radiance, deep sea, great deep sea, stunning deep sea, clear deep sea, lake, great lake, fading lake, dissipating lake, arcane lake, eye, corruption, communion, clockwise metamorphosis, anti-clockwise metamorphosis, beast and formless Oedon were all secret symbols left by Caryll. Unfortunately, there is no way to be certain that Caryll produced all of the above. Since nothing points to Caryll being the creator of those runes, we only know that Caryll was the one to leave them. Other runes exist which are even more obscure in their origin. Runes such as Hunter, Beast's Embrace, Clawmark, Blood Rapture, Impurity, and Oedon Wraith contain no information as to who created them or who left them. Interestingly enough, there seem to be multiple versions of the same rune. On the one hand, it could mean that a person envisioned variations of one rune. On the other hand, it could mean that multiple people received a similar signal or perceived the same uttering of the Great Ones. Some signals may have been stronger. Some whispers may have been louder, since clearer runes yield higher rewards. Then again, some smiths could have been better at their craft, and their transcriptions turned out less foggy, creating more powerful runes. Curiously enough, the most powerful guidance rune has not yet been found. Perhaps a runesmith talented enough to hear or to transcribe those specific whispers effectively has not yet been born. Although the info may be lacking, we could all the same speculate about who was involved in the creation of runes, other than Caryll, Adeline, and possibly Ludwig. Of course, just because a rune is discovered somewhere, or is found in someone's possession, does not mean that the location or the individual is the rune's point of origin. But trying to come up with theories is super fun, so allons-y! After the repeated experiments in controlling the scourge of the beasts, the gentle embrace rune was discovered. The healing church must have been involved in the creation of the rune, because when its implementation failed, the embrace became a forbidden rune, but this knowledge became a foundation of the healing church. Embrace can be acquired after vanquishing Lawrence, the first Vacar, in the Hunter's Nightmare. We can thus speculate that Lawrence himself envisioned Embrace. We know that runes have an effect on people, and perhaps this rune didn't produce the effect the healing church expected. Which means the failure of the rune could either be alluding to Lawrence taking on a beastly form due to envisioning the rune, or the rune's inability to reverse Lawrence's transformation. Communion is another rune connected to the healing church and can be found imprinted in various places of the research hall. Blood ministration is the pursuit of communion. In certain cases, blood ministration could have had a little-known side effect, which caused the ministers of the healing church to envision runes. Communion, by the way, is also dropped by a celestial emissary, which could point to celestial beings acting as mini rune-making factories for the healing church. Corruption is a rune found in the secret room of Castle Cainhurst, where Annalise resides these days. Queen Annalise could have envisioned the rune after repeated contact with blood dregs, and she could have passed it down to her Vilebloods. Blood Rupture is a rune that resonates with the servants of the Queen, carrier of the Child of Blood. The rune could be alluding to Queen Annalise or Queen Yarnum. On the one hand, blood rupture is dropped by the Bloody Crow of Cainhurst. Of course, it could mean that the crow envisioned the rune. It is, however, more likely that the rune was simply passed down to him by Annalise. On the other hand, blood rupture is dropped by the Shadow of Yarnum. Perhaps the Shadow envisioned the rune long ago, meaning that the rune is actually referencing Queen Yarnum as the carrier of the Child of Blood. Then again, if blood rupture actually refers to Queen Yarnum, what's to say she didn't envision it herself and pass it down to her Shadow? Of course, it's possible that either the Crow, the Shadow, Queen Annalise, or Queen Yarnum envisioned similar runes at different times. The Hunter rune has been adopted by those who have taken the Hunter of Hunters oath. Perhaps the first Hunter of Hunters envisioned this rune to pass it on to future watchmen responsible for reprimanding those who have become addled with blood. Who knows? Maybe Velka herself uttered the Hunter rune for the first Hunter of Hunters to hear. Lols, joking. Likewise, the Radiance rune was adopted by the Executioners. Maybe the rune was envisioned long ago by the first Executioner to be used by his successors, similarly to the way the Hunter rune is dispatched among the Hunter of Hunters. Human or not, the oozing blood is a medium of the highest grade and the essence of the Formless Great One. Both Oedon and his inadvertent worshippers surreptitiously seek the precious blood. Formless Oedon and Oedon Wraith are runes that could have been produced by the followers of Oedon. The Chapel Dweller Agatha could have envisioned Formless Oedon, since he drops it, while Adela the Nun could have envisioned Oedon Wraith, since she drops it. Furthermore, Wraith and Formless can be found in Yusefka's clinic. Wraith, being in impostor Yusefka's possession, could point to the impostor being the one who envisioned the rune. Perhaps she did so in her attempts to connect with Oedon. Maybe, at one time, Oedon himself greeted his followers in the waking world, spoke to them, and blessed them with those runes, which allowed them to share these runes with subsequent followers. It wouldn't be the only time an outerworldly being gave out a rune. One can acquire a moon rune directly from the brain of Mensis, a legitimate great one, by making contact. The brain of Mansis seems to respond to those who exhibit some understanding of geometry. I bet Master Willem, who drops the I rune, also attempted to contact the Great Ones directly. It is well known that Master Willem was disillusioned by the limits of human intellect. He looked to beings from higher planes for guidance, and just maybe beings of higher planes answered, which led Master Willem to envision the I rune. Likewise, the Great Patches, who drops the anti-clockwise Metamorphosis rune and never fails to backstab, may have envisioned anti-clockwise Metamorphosis. After proclaiming his love for the amygdala must have answered. The amygdala's utterings could have granted Patches the rune. Plus, the rune may have led to his transformation into a glorious human-headed spider, which brought him closer to the amygdala, at least in appearance. The impurity rune is a peculiar one, because it's found inside the beast eater, Walter. Inside could be referring to Walter having the rune inside his mind. However, this impurity rune could point toward runes being more physical than metaphysical, since inside could be referring to Walter inhaling the rune while consuming a beast who was holding on to it. It could also be referring to Walter's own body producing the rune, through perhaps petrification of his own blood. I can already hear you object and say that Runesmith Caryll did not rely on blood. And you're right. However, several runes contain a nuance of blood. Either Caryll's technique changed with time, or someone else used traces of blood while making the runes. But techniques behind the creation of runes is a story for another time. It's important to note that runes such as I, Anti-Clockwise Metamorphosis, Arcane Lake, Beast, Blood Rapture, Claw Mark, Clear Deep Sea, Clockwise Metamorphosis, Communion, Deep Sea, Dissipating Lake, Fading Lake, Formless Oedon, Great Deep Sea, Great Lake, Air, Lake, Oedon Wraith, and Stunning Deep Sea can be found inside dungeons. Moreover, engravings such as the Hunter rune are present in the labyrinths. This could point to the past dwellers of the dungeons, at one time or another having envisioned runes. To add, there are writings in the dungeons that do not correspond to any known runes, which could mean that certain runes remain unknown to us and are sealed away to this day. It's of course possible that tomb prospectors dropped a whole bunch of runes while exploring the dungeons, or vandalized the labyrinths by drawing symbols on the walls. Those darn kids. A few lore historians noticed that the Garden of Eyes hold a rock which contained an engraving of a spider-like creature with eyes. Perhaps this rock is an attempt by the Garden of Eyes to create a knockoff rune, to transcribe a rune they have envisioned, or to simply communicate something to a passerby. Either way, their attempts seem to have failed, as we have yet to figure out what the rock represents. Interestingly enough, no runes seem to be found in the fishing hamlet. However, a great runologist, GSF, discovered a mystery rune located in the astral clock tower. The rune looks like a bunch of parasites having a party. Perhaps this rune is referencing the parasites of Cause, and could have been envisioned by the inhabitants of the fishing hamlet, after repeated exposure to parasites of Cause. The rune may have been stolen by the hunters after they raided the hamlet. Wouldn't it be something if the runesmiths knew each other, kept in contact, and met yearly at a conference to discuss the latest developments in the world of runes, and to listen to Caryll talk about the inhuman utterings of Great Ones?
Although the difference is subtle, the beast is a horrific and unwelcome instinct deep within the hearts of men, while Clawmark is an alluring invitation to accept this very nature.
big shout out to Lauren Gray, Rad Lad, Zaphid, and the whole Bloodborne server really for helping me gain a better understanding of the runes. And a big thank you to JSF and Herbert West for looking over and adding to my notes. Well, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.